What's up, everyone? Welcome back. We're here a little bit after the release of the Dead Space remake. We're going to get into a lot of the details. Really, Motive just did an amazing job, and I feel like EA's clapping in the back right now. They're like, "Oh my god, we finally made it. We're back. Thank you, Motive."
Yeah,
Motive and Respawn have single-handedly revived EA.
saved the studio.
I mean, from all the bad decisions and microtransactions that they've had with the success of Squadrons, and now you have the success of this Dead Space remake, which blows Squadrons out of the water. While Squadrons was good and it was received very well, this is just next level. As always, this is Filmic Gaming. If you guys enjoy the conversation, just please leave a like, subscribe, so you can get all our future videos. So we'll start off with atmosphere. Because I think that's the most important part when it comes to any Dead Space game, at least the original, and why people loved it. It was the atmosphere.
Yeah,
Brendan, what do you think about what they did with the atmosphere, man?
it feels the same, but like updated in like a new way that is just so like everything like feels almost like new and enhanced, but it is also like I recognize every room I walk into. Like for reference, like the first two games I've played easily like 10 times each. Like I've played through those New Game Plus, like so much of my life gone to those games in my youth. But so now, like going through it now, I'll update it. Every room I walk into, I recognize, and like I'm filled with like dread because I know what's coming. You know what I mean? Like the room with the cryo tank, or the like the room with like the like the cryogenically freezing chamber when like you face the hunter. Like
Yeah.
once I'm like in that room, I'm like, oh shit, I know what's coming. When you go in the first decontamination chamber, and
Yes.
like once you get in there, you have to like fight your way out. So it's like or even just like the first time you go. I remember there's this one. I don't even know what you call it, but like you stasis it over to you, and then like it takes you across this like long trench like way, and then and as you get to the other side, there's like a whole. You see all the necromorphs like waiting for you as getting across. Just like all these things I remember from like the original game that are just like like before they're happening. I'm like, oh my god, I remember this, and I'm like filled with dread because I'm like, I don't want to do this again.
Yeah, man, and it's something that the lighting really just helps because
Yeah,
the technology they put, the lighting really just lets things pop out in the dark. Whenever light hits them, whenever you catch a gleam of the eye or something, the level of detail in the dark areas is something that they seem to have worked on a lot.
yeah,
Obviously, I think with the first one, we can all say that the graphics were a little dated, right? Even if you're
well,
running
yeah,
it on a, yeah, I mean, there's certain people who ran it like on a PC, with like max settings, able to get all the frames in the world out of it. So it's one thing about how you walk through environments, like you say, you feel like everything's new again. That's how I felt. But one of the main things I just noticed is just the actual, having headphones on, that audio experience of whatever it is, whatever vibration that comes up, rattling the metal
yeah,
around you. But as you're walking through the hallways, there's whispers in your ear, and one
yeah.
of them, one of them actually, it said similar to dementia without underlying organic damage, and it was just a whisper. And I sat there and I listened to it and I went back and I went to load again in so I could get it to play again because it only plays once or twice, but it stops. Once you leave the room, you don't hear that line anymore. There's other whispers that
Mhm.
happen, but that one line there, similar to dementia, without underlying organic damage, that shit had me thinking for like 5 minutes. Like, wow, is that like just added to foreshadow Isaac's condition? Like to foreshadow the fact that he's just going a little crazy already at that point in the story, because we all know the marker causes
Yeah.
his insanity,
Mhm.
and the closer he gets to it, the stronger it gets. I think the whole point of it is that it's luring it to him, with its calls, but those like subtle whispers, the speaking through the vents, rattling of enemies, growling of enemies too. Like, I swear to God, I feel like you walk past the vent, it sees you, it growls, it doesn't say
Yeah.
anything, and it stays in there, and then it just goes away. And you look, and you're like, all right, there's nothing there. But the way that they design it is that that thing was there, it was watching you, it growled like it was hungry, and then it ran away to try to find a way to eat you, and it's gonna show up later. So you said you've seen some comparisons online about it. Just from an outsider point of view, like someone who hasn't played it yet, who's just looking, is on the fence, and maybe looking to purchase the game. Obviously waiting for reviews and initial thoughts to drop that $70 on on PlayStation 5 or the good old $60 on PC. What are your thoughts of what you've seen on how the world is receiving this game so far?
I think it's honestly great. I remember when the game first dropped. Um, I had a hard time playing it the first time. I actually chickened out as a kid playing this.
I
I
don't
didn't
blame you.
really like. I went back and tried, and I just couldn't do it, bro. So now seeing it with the updated graphics, I'm having like flashbacks of being shook.
Mhm.
Even though like I know what's coming, but it just looks so like
I mean, from his movement around
I,
environments, right? Like they added a heaviness to his step now, which makes you
hmm
realize that this guy's wearing a metal engineering suit, you know? So like everywhere he walks is doom, 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 doom.
yeah, like the details on the outfit is clean too. Like you could see every little indent from the you know how like his shoulder pads are. It has like the lining.
Mhm.
Same with his spine on on the chassis. You could like see his fabrics. You know, like it's way
Yeah.
more detailed. Obviously,
Yeah.
because better tech. You know, yeah, and the gore looks phenomenal.
Isn't that crazy? We're in a world where we're like, yo, oh my god, like yo, that gore is so crazy, you know?
Yeah, because now,
It's
like, obviously, like I said, you know, in 08, 09, there was, like, only so much you could do. But now, with these graphics, even the fire looks good on the flamethrower, you know?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I always say, like, elements are hard to get down, like fire and water, especially in gaming.
Right.
But the flamethrower looks pretty solid with the fire, you know?
Yeah.
I agree.
And
They really
it's just
nailed it.
really touched up. Like, I think they did layers upon layers of touching up to make this as polished as it can be. And I really think they did it. Even with the lighting and the darkness, you know?
Yeah, because I mean, if you do you guys remember when they did those like little walkthroughs a few months back, where they just actually when they first really announced the remake as well, they had like a level ready to watch, and was them walking down a hallway. It was very simple. It was very early build. They said it wasn't final, but it still showed, you know, a level of polish that was gonna do justice by the game. But now that we have the game in our hands, God, man, this is what a completed game needs to look like.
hmm
This is a
And you
game that
know,
when it was finished, they went back and finished it 4 more times. You know what I
hmm
mean? Fully fleshed
I,
out.
I was gonna say, I think the gameplay comes off a little smoother this time around too.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
The
you would hope
Like
melee
so.
the
from
melee attack alone has
right.
improved drastically over what it was before. This, you know, what it was before was a violent flailing. One thing I do love that they kept though, the stomp has been minimally changed. I
hmm
love that it stayed the same because I love the carnage of that stomp from the original game. The carnage of it, whenever you stomped, you knew it destroyed everything below it. They kept it, they didn't change it too much, but the punch is what they did change, and
Yeah.
that was a very, very welcome change. Because
Well,
you know the
well,
arm actually
hmm
aims.
the punch was included, I think, in the later Dead Space games, just not the original one, the very, very, very first one. You were able to
Yeah.
swing
Well,
in
the
like Dead
first one
Space
the
Two,
first
I
one
believe.
had the it wasn't a punch, but it was more like a just a violent flailing. And yeah, in Dead Space 2, they introduced a better like a better, I guess, melee combat system in terms of like how it looked. But there's something different when it comes to this remake. It's actually better at connecting. The arm, you know, goes up or down depending on like where the head is even of the enemy that you're attacking. So there's just a lot of polish that they added to everything. And it really started with the audio. But once you get past the audio and you get past the experience, if you can, because it's that scary, the combat underneath is just another level that's welcomely refreshed. So um one of the things I kept thinking about when I was playing it though is like, all right, we got Dead Space. Do we get a Dead Space 2 remake?
I think so, based on the results of this so far. Yeah, based on the critical results, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure will
Mm-hmm.
feed into the sales results. I think so, and I think everyone would be open to that.
You think they'll be open to a Dead Space 3 though?
I think
I think so.
if they continue this narrative of reworking it, taking what continuing what worked and dropping or reworking within it, then yes. I think they could.
See, only asked that because a lot of people didn't like Dead Space 3 because it took kind of like the
Well,
action shooter route, you
yeah,
know?
But they could change that up completely. You know.
yeah. That's why I say if they continue the narrative they're doing, because even
Hmm.
with this game, they took the sections that didn't work and changed them up, like the missile defense mission from the first game, the
Oh yeah,
original.
yeah.
They reworked that completely. So now you go outside and realign the guns to fire themselves. You don't actually have to just shoot the meteorites with like terrible aim, or instead they they rework that mission. So
Fucking horrendous
Right.
section. Just
exactly,
horrendous.
exactly.
I mean, you could kind of see where they were limited back then and where they tried to spice things up to add variety to the game. But damn, that game was so good, and you don't even think back, and even that's not even the first thing you think about, the missile defense mission. Like you don't think about that.
Right.
That's like one of the last things you remember. But when you get to it, you're like, oh shit, this was here. I
Yeah, I
forgot
hate
about
this.
this mission.
Hmm.
You know, and all the countless times that I replayed it. But at the end of the day, like you're right, the way they switched up everything, it's almost like we're seeing this sort of retelling of stories. I don't know if this is gonna be a common thing, but people going back and retelling stories in the way that they should have been told in the first place, and people actually love it. Like it's not like people are going back and like, oh, we don't care, like you should have did it right the first time, like if you go back and you just switch up certain aspects and you make it a remake, and then you can continue the story from there, you really can build yourself something special, because that's what Dead Space was. After Dead Space 2, no one thought Dead Space 3 was going to come out the way it did.
Hmm.
Everyone was ready for what the next
Yeah.
experience would be like, because Dead Space 2 is arguably, in a lot of people's opinions, better than Dead Space 1. Is it as
Hmm.
scary? No, but it's better as a game
It's more
in a lot of
cinematic.
people's opinions.
Hmm.
Yeah, and more cinematic as well. More better, better. They took advantage of the technology that they had a
Well,
lot too.
it was more. I feel like where Dead Space One was more on like the total horror side of like the pendulum, and then the other side
Yeah.
is like the action side, which is Dead Space 3, and
Mhm.
then Dead Space 2 was right in the happy medium between the two. It was a good
Yes.
mix of
Hmm.
horror and action. It was
And
more
it did
action than the
well
well.
with
first one,
the
but less than
it
the
did
third.
well with the lore too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's what do you guys take away from Gunnar Wright's performance in this game? Because obviously he was brought in to put the lines to the story for a character that didn't have any lines before. So we just think about how they implemented him back into this original game.
I mean, I'm very happy to see him back, and like very happy also that they modeled Isaac's face after him more, because the first game obviously he was silent, and
Hmm.
his face looked a lot different. And then the second game
Hmm.
came out, and they kind of like reworked the face a little bit and kind of made it a
Hmm.
halfway point between Gunnar Wright's face and the original iteration. And then obviously in this version they kind of just completely made it look like Gunnar Wright. Um, and I have no problem with that, because he
Yeah,
has pretty
of
much become
course.
the character. So good
Hmm.
for him. I think it's good.
I actually happen to like the original model better. I think that it had a more action. They chose a model was like a little too soft. Like this guy doesn't look like he's gonna survive. You know what I mean? Like
No,
I like the gruff look of the model that they had before, but that's just one opinion, and I'm not the only one. A lot of people thought that the change was a little weird. It kind of reminded me of when they changed Spider-Man's model from the original model on Marvel Spider-Man to the remastered model, which is
oh
what
yeah,
came from
I
up.
did hate that. I did hate that change
Yeah,
so
so it's like
much.
it's a little jarring, It's kind of like the same idea
Yeah,
here.
but that change served literally no purpose, because it's not like they changed it to someone's actual face. They just changed it to
Yeah,
some other random face when the original one looked a lot better, in my opinion.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, true. I mean, not that it doesn't work. You're right. I mean, it works just fine. Besides, he has a helmet on the whole time, so you don't even see his face. So it's just something you really get to see in the beginning opening sections. You get to see his face model and what they decided to do with the character. I actually happen to love the fact that his audio doesn't seem forced. You know what I mean? If you actually listen to his audio, they fit his audio within sections of the original dialogue as what you would have expected him to say in that moment. But he still doesn't really influence, he still doesn't really impact the story. It's not like he's all of a sudden the star of the freaking
Hmm.
game. He's constantly just having every conversation possible, and he's saying cheesy shit, like nothing like that. He doesn't walk down the hall and talk to himself. He doesn't, scream like when an enemy pops out at you. He's still dead quiet. You know what I mean? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just it's something that I thought that was really cool because it kept you with. I actually liked the no dialogue experience. I thought it was very powerful for the actual I guess time you're playing the game.
I was gonna say, in my opinion, I mean the change now. I mean, I don't know. I kind of like it better because like now I feel like Isaac has more agency. You know what I mean? He's able to
Hmm.
react better. He's able to like. I mean, I get it. You know, the silent stoic protagonist, but he's not like just an errand boy anymore. You know what I mean? He has more agency.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loved when he talked in 2 and 3, right? Like, I think 2 was
Right.
awesome. I think 3 was it got a little cheesy there, the dialogue, the
Yeah,
writing, but, the second one was really good. I thought it was perfect, and I thought it was what they modeled the dialogue for Isaac after, for the remake. I think they wanted to lean more towards that second game, for him.
So do you think with the dialogue that he has in this game, it kind of like sets his personality up for the next Dead Space 2 remake if they come to terms with making it?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, EA has been notorious as a company that watches the numbers, right? If the
yeah,
numbers do well in the game, they will continue. If the numbers
Mm-hmm.
don't do well, even though it's loved, right? Even though people want you to make another one because they will give you their money, it's not enough and they won't continue it. That's kind of what happened with a lot of the studios that EA closed back then, including I forgot what the name of Visceral Studios, right?
yeah.
That's
Visceral.
what happened with Visceral at the end of the day. I mean, the third one, as much as people didn't like the direction that it's not like people wanted it to stop. They wanted it to continue in a way, maybe just not with Isaac anymore. But EA saw the numbers and the way they did for the third one. They said, no, we're not doing it anymore. They closed the studio down
Mm-hmm.
and they moved on, right? And then that was just the first of many horrible decisions, by the way. I happen to think that was the origin, no pun intended, because their game platform is Origins. But that was the origin of all their mistakes, I think. I think right when they closed Visceral Game Studios down, that was the first domino to fall. And then they started going into microtransactions because at the end of the day, the only reason they closed it was for money, right? Like
Yep.
they didn't close it because, yeah, they messed up one game, but they had just made two that were amazing. Like some of
Mm-hmm.
the two of the best horror games of all time. We're talking
Right.
Resident Evil status. The
No.
first one was just like the first Resident Evil game, right? It was took a lot of influence from that, among other games, but it took a lot of influence from the first Resident Evil. And the second one was really just if you wanted to take Resident Evil 4 and put it in the Dead Space universe, Dead Space, it was a perfect combination between action and horror and creepiness. And that's what Resident Evil 4 was, if you think about it as well, too. So yeah, there's a reason. If those first two games were good, I would have never closed the studio down, bro. I would have been like, all right, you get one more.
Mm-hmm.
But EA has always been about the numbers. So that's why I think we're gonna get a Dead Space 2 remake. And that Dead Space 3, best believe Motive has their eye on that game to have the most changes.
Yeah,
The
they
Mm-hmm.
most
better.
changes. Yeah, I think they'll
Right.
change setting. I think they'll change story. They'll change as much as possible, and that third game I think is going to be special if they get that far. But I think that they will, considering what we just saw.
Right. See, now the thing is, Dead Space 3 wasn't really all that bad in my opinion. Like it was all right.
No, it wasn't
Uh,
bad, but by
No.
comparison, I think it really lacked in the horror for me. That was
oh
the
yeah,
one thing, is it
definitely.
really lacked in the
See,
horror.
but now I understand it like it lacked in the horror, which it definitely did, and it took the action route. But at least it wasn't a Resident Evil 6 route, because that was horrendous.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. Yeah, you're
That
right.
like people forget that Resident Evil 6 was terrible,
Mhm.
bro. You know,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, it was. Yeah, it
and
was.
like I feel like people try to make Dead Space 3 seem just as bad when nah, to me it can't, you know?
Yeah, we picked up Dead Space 3 on release day, I believe, and we played it co-op at home.
Mhm.
I still remember it to this day because one of the best parts about Dead Space 3 was the
Was the
co-op.
co-op. Mhm.
So, and as much as it dumbed down the experience in terms of the horror aspect of it, it just wasn't scary when you had someone else there with you, with
Yeah.
a machine gun because the weapons were just out of their minds in the third game, and the customizations that you would get, right, the loot system that they had, which not really loot, but they had a way for you to customize your guns a lot more than it was in previous games. and you had, your outfits that they would give you. It just became so much more like the thing about that game is that it was around the time when that first started getting introduced, right? Like paying for outfits and paying for customizations of this and customizations of that, and you could buy credits and tokens and all that crap. Now you could do it before, but no one really did it. It was really pushed in the third game because they wanted to milk as much money out of the game as possible. But it didn't work
Mhm.
out in terms of what people wanted for the experience. Like, if in order for Dead Space to work, it needed to just be true to itself. But the minute that they decided to just go away from that, mind you, this is a decision up top. The minute they went away from that, the fans went away too, and they were like, "Yeah, no, I'm not a fan of this." It wasn't bad.
Right.
It tied up the story, right? It did what it needed to do to wrap up Isaac's arc, but it just didn't have that factor. And
Mhm.
I believe you faced the same boss a few times in that game too. It was another one of those games where the same boss would pop up, and you'd kill it the same way.
Yeah.
You look for the yellow sack, and you just
Pause.
you just shoot it. Yeah, pause, and you just shoot it, and you keep on you rinse and repeat. But it wasn't a bad game. It had its points where we thought it executed well. But if there's ever a game in the series that could be changed a lot and do well with a refresh, it's the third one. And I think
Mhm.
Motive has their
Yeah.
eye on that one. That's why I'm so excited for this series. I think it's going to be different. And it could continue past the third one now. We could get spin-offs, guys. You guys remember the DLC
Yeah.
that came out for the first game?
Oh yes, Severed or whatever, or
Yeah,
no,
like
that was I think that was the second one actually. I
I
think
don't.
that was the
I just
second one.
remember in the first one there was DLC that showed you from another person's perspective on the Ishimura before the outbreak, or at the
Mm.
time of the outbreak of the necromorphs. And you kind of go through there. Like, there was another one that was, I believe, just another character. Like, I believe you could play like as a random, I guess, soldier or grunt, and you try to survive, right? And he's got the whole Dead Space. Like, imagine what they can do with those things, like DLC for that. So you just kind of look forward and you're like, okay, fine. It's wiped the slate clean. Okay. They kept Dead Space 1. I think Dead Space 2, I don't even want to know what that's gonna be like when it comes out. I don't even want to go through the daycare section in that game.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
like, I don't even want to go through like the return to the Ishimura in that game. Like, nope, nope.
I
Not
want to
cool.
witness the scene at the end of Dead Space 2 when the markers like going in like full swing, and like
Oh,
when you're like being led by like the hallucination of Nicole, and like you see the marker just like pulsing and like the everything like burning up and like shooting into the air, like that, all that, like
yeah.
when everything's like
Mhm.
going to shit basically. And
Hmm.
or the end, just even like the ending sequence with Ellie, like I want to see like that, have that shit in high definition when like she shows up and like the credits are rolling, you're like, oh, not today, and you know what I mean,
Yeah.
that the way that shit ends, like, oh my god,
I
nothing,
mean, just
nothing,
the
no
opening.
ending.
Do you remember
Uh,
the opening sequence to Dead Space 2?
oh yeah, of course. Oh my, actually, that actually,
There you
there was
go.
there
There
was an
you
East.
go. I do not want to see that. I don't think I want to see that first scene. I will
No,
see it.
there's an Easter egg in in the remake that I found, where you find the audio log that is the intro to Dead Space 2. Like, how it opens with the intro of
Yeah.
Nicole calling, and she's talking to Isaac, and then it kind of pans back and you see that he's like being interrogated by the medical guy.
Damn, look
That's
at
like,
that. Brendan with the Easter egg drops.
yeah, it's
I,
like that. I
that
literally,
that's one of the best things about this, is finding those added little tidbits here and there. Oh
yeah,
man. But yeah, that first scene when the necromorph kind of comes and kills a guy, you're kind of strapped up, and you're in
yeah,
the straight jacket, and you're leaning back, right? You're about to be rolled out, and then it just comes in and goes right through the guy's brain. It does that, and it stretches its face out, and it does that, and then it screams at you. It's just, and then you gotta run. You're telling me you're gonna remake that scene? Come on, bro. No,
Mhm.
I'm good. I'm good,
No,
man.
and they're gonna remake the scene where you put the needle in his eye.
Oh,
yeah.
thank
Cross
you.
my
Like,
heart and hope to die. Stick the
I
needle in
happen
your
I
eye.
happen to be on the fence about whether or not Dead Space 2 is as scary as the first one. I think
It's
it's
not.
just
It's
not.
definitely not.
It's
It's
not as
definitely not.
consistently scary, and it doesn't
But
approach the
it
same
doesn't.
kinds of scares, but it still did its job.
I
God
think
damn
it's
it, there's a
more
lot of points in that
stressful.
game that were f***ing scary,
I think it's more
including,
stressful. It's
Yeah.
stressful more than like scary, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
There's more. You have more power in the second one. You've kind of, you're experienced in the world, so it's inevitable. You're gonna be less, you're gonna be more numb to the scares. But there's still like when they first said, "All right, oh yo, by the way, we have this ship here, the USG Ishimura. Yeah, you gotta go back through it though. We know that you went through it before, and it was a terrifying experience, but yeah, we just you kind of got to go back in there, and it was kind of like the devs just like messing with you. At first, you were like, "No way, there's no way, it's actually USG or Shimura," and you go through, and the whole tension of that whole scene of the whole like nothing shows up for like more than like almost 3/4 of the level, and then at the end it just goes all to shit. It's like, oh man, I think Motive has got something special here. It's very special. Did you get to the drag tentacle yet?
Oh, you mean the giant like anus
Yeah.
looking
Did you get
thing
to
that?
experience the drag tentacle?
Yes, I did, the Leviathan, as they call it. You
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
Yes, I did. I did get to experience the Leviathan, and it is just as annoying as it was the first time around. Let me tell you. But once you shoot it out into space, it is satisfying. But if I remember correctly, that is not the end of it. I don't remember, but I did. I
Mhm.
did get past that part where you're like, you go into the giant dark room and all the light turns on, and there it is, just like looking at you and puckering, like, come at
Yo.
me, bro.
I think that just actually reminds me another very effective thing they did was the zero G movements that they added from the later games into
Yes.
this
Oh,
one.
yes, yes, yes. They
Holy
did.
crap. Like when you first initiate the thrusters and you jump up, just the heftiness of it and how you feel like, all right, cool. And you move around and it's very subtle. It's not overdone. You feel like you have really good control. You double tap R2 and you straighten yourself. Um, or if you tap it, it goes like 45 degrees, I think, and you can keep doing that. But it was really, really well done. I think the first encounter, you get a necromorph like straight across from you, in that big room where you first use zero G, and it just shoots like the way that they have the combat for the necromorphs while you're in zero G is just way better. Like they'll actually maneuver to a point where they can just literally just fly at you. Like I'm gonna put footage of this up on the video, but the way that they throw themselves at you is just like, all right, damn, like can you chill a little bit? Like you were just over there, I'm trying to shoot you, but then you're gonna go ahead and just within a second you're in my face. It's just really well done, the zero G movements, man. I gotta say. But that's just amongst the many things that a lot of people love. Obviously, as time goes on, they'll probably release some DLC. They'll probably do a couple of patches here and there to fix some bugs. But I mean, it's to be expected. There's gonna be a few bugs here and there. But overall, I would give this game a 9 out of 10. I think the only thing that holds it back for me is just the face model. In terms of the guy, like there's just anything that I could nitpick on, it'd be that. I just wish they kind of stayed with the original. But other than that, everything else is perfect. I don't think there's really anything that they could improve further. I'm just getting ready for Dead Space 2. We're getting ready for Dead Space 3 because we know that one's going to be changed up a lot.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, I mean with that, I mean we'll probably revisit this in a couple weeks once we all finish the game and probably go through it a couple times with New Game Plus. But Motive is taking a Dead Space formula by the reins. So we'll give them their props. If you guys enjoyed the conversation, make sure to leave a like, subscribe so you can get future conversations whenever they drop. And also feel free to comment down below. Let us know what you think about the game. Is the game worth it? Worth the $70? Is there anything implemented in it that you think was worth it? Or are you gonna wait for a sale? Catch this like around $50? Because there are actually a lot of people who just refuse to pay 70, and that's fine. But you can go ahead and let us know below, and we'll try to respond to as many people as we can. But until next time, this is Film and Gaming, guys. Peace out.